I'm Michelle Reed, the Superintendent of Fairfax County Public Schools, and today I'm having a conversation with Mrs. Han Bowie, who's an author and a former teacher here in Fairfax County Public Schools, and a Fairfax County Public School parent, and I think a lifelong teacher in many ways.
Yes.
But I've been so moved, Han, by your story and so inspired by you and all that you are accomplishing.
Thank you.
I just wish maybe you could start with kind of sharing a little bit about your story and how you ended up as a teacher here in Fairfax County and then as an author.
First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to share with you. When I first came to this country, it was in 1975, and my family, I left Vietnam during the end of the Vietnam War, and we came to the United States, and we were rescued at sea by the U.S. Navy, and eventually settled at Fort Indiantown Gap in Pennsylvania, and that's where I met my first teacher, Miss Mary Lou.
Wow.
And Miss Mary Lou Shada was my very first teacher. I only knew her as Miss Mary Lou because I wasn't speaking English yet, and I just gravitated towards Miss Mary Lou because she was so kind to me. And after being at sea and loss of home, I was really very shy and quiet. So in Vietnam, I was really eager to learn. But when I first came to the refugee camp, after everything that happened and our long journey, I was really reluctant and shy. And so the first couple weeks, I didn't speak English at all. I chose not to. And I was worried about making mistakes. But then Miss Mary Lou really helped me to feel comfortable around her and at ease. And eventually, because of something that I discovered at a store at the refugee camp, we had many donations from Salvation Army. And so one day I went into the store and I saw a sweater, and on the sweater was a really adorable reindeer. But I didn't know the word reindeer or that animal because my grandmother didn't recognize the animal either. And so that encouraged me and inspired me to want to go see my teacher the next class. And I rushed to school early, and Miss Mary Lou was there, and I pointed to my sweater, and she said reindeer. And that was my first English word.
Wow.
And I knew from that moment on, if I could say reindeer, I could say anything, because I had challenges saying the letter R even in Vietnamese. And there were lots of R's in reindeer. So I figured if I could say reindeer, then I could say anything. And after that, I realized that it's more important that I try and speak the language, not so much that it has to be perfect, because in my own voice, then it becomes my words. And so Miss Mary Lou actually inspired me to become a teacher. I knew at a very early age that I wanted to be like her, to help children feel safe and seen, because she did that for me at the refugee camp. And so on our very last day together, she gave me a photo of herself, a little black and white photo. She was 19 years old. She was volunteering, and she was going to become a teacher herself.
Wow.
And she did end up becoming a teacher. But on the back of the photo, she had written, Han, I love you, Mary Lou Shada. And I kept that photo for 40-something years.
Wow.
And when I was working on On's New Word, my second book, it was inspired by Miss Mary Lou and how she helped me to learn my first words. And so when I was working on that book, my husband found her. So Miss Mary Lou's actually back in my life. And I was able to share my journey with her as a writer, but also tell her her impact. And to be able to speak to her in English, because at first I didn't know what she had written in the back of the photo until I learned English. And when I realized what she had written and what a sweet message it was, it meant so much to me, and I had always wished that I could tell her how I felt too. And so for me to be able to get on the phone with her and tell her, it was just such a full circle moment.
Yeah, I was gonna
One
say,
that I only dreamt of.
So moving. And then you think of all the children you've impacted, right?
Exactly.
And wondering how many children are out there that wish they could come back and talk to Miss Han.
Well, actually, I've been fortunate to have some students reach out to me, and I actually have a student named Ashley who actually became a school counselor in Fairfax County, and she did reach out to me to tell me that. So I was really fortunate to have that experience and to be able to do it for Miss Mary Lou and share with her. And part of the reason I wrote On's New Word, I wrote this book because I really wanted to just honor teachers and the work that they do, and to be able to show the impact of kindness and inspire more teachers to be kind, but to also help children who are going through a similar experience know that they're not alone. And because I feel like with this, it's about me learning my first English word, but children are always learning something new.
Right.
And I want children to know that it doesn't matter what it is that they're learning. It takes practice, and if they can keep practicing, they'll get it. And I wanted children to hear it from me because I went through that.
And how important it is to not let perfection
Yes.
get in the way of learning and
Exactly.
progress. How old were you again, Han, when
I
you
was,
were at
8
sea?
I was 8 years old
8 years
when
old.
my family and I left Vietnam. It was very sudden with the fall of Saigon.
Right.
And my family and I were fortunate that the U.S. Navy were in Asia, so
Yeah.
they actually found us near the Philippines
Yeah.
and rescued us and brought us to
Wow.
the island of Guam. And then from there we went to the mainland.
Wow. So one of the things we were talking about earlier was that you were recently at a library speaking
Yes.
about introducing your book and just how that refugee experience
Yes.
impacted you, and were able to connect with another student. You want to share that a minute? Because I just think those connections are so important.
I feel so blessed to be able to, still be in schools visiting with children. Because even after I stopped teaching and stayed home to raise my family, I was still volunteering a lot at schools. But now I get to actually go back and share my stories and do read alouds and story times and engage with children. And I really love it when I see kids also being brave and standing up front with me, sharing their languages and sharing with me what it is that they're learning. It could be a new skill. But recently I was at an event and I met a little child who just came from Guatemala, and her name's Shalom, and she was so courageous in sharing with her teacher what this meant to her to hear my story. And she bravely shared with me that she also came from 2 refugee camps, just like the character in my book,
Right.
and that she was also shy to speak a new language, but that she was excited to learn. And so that meant a lot to me, and I wanted her to know that she's brave. Because I think sometimes, because when I was growing up, I didn't have books that showed my experience.
Right.
And so sometimes it can be very isolating as you're navigating
Right.
life in a new country with all of the uncertainties.
Right.
And so I'm so glad that I was able to meet Shalom, and I think it was more of an honor for me to meet her, because I can't imagine what it's like for her to go through that, and now starting again. Like, I know what it's like, but not to have that support. So I wanted her to know that she can see herself in books.
Yeah, I just continue to be inspired by you, Han, and
Thank
just
you.
the saying, right? You can be anything in this world, choose to be kind.
Yes.
Right, and just that power of connection. So just really want to thank you for
Thank you. I
everything
really
you've done.
appreciate you saying that, because part of the reason that I write, actually my purpose as a writer and also when I was a teacher, is to share the impact of kindness and to show children what is possible.
Wow. Well, you're inspiring.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.